Hello there. Thanks so much for joining me here at Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I'm Randi Roberts. I'm an executive and leadership and career life coach, and I absolutely love helping people love their work while they're achieving their goals. And so these thoughts that I'm going to share with you today are in that spirit, hopefully to make things either a little easier for you, a little more productive for you, or just plain more fun as you're going through your day. So, what we're here to talk about today is Leadership Imposter Syndrome, or LIS. And if you're wondering what that is, it's kind of that quiet question that shows up, and it might sound like, do I really belong here? Do I really deserve this seat at the table? Are people going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing? It's that inner critic voice that sometimes speak to us. And sometimes it shows up right when leadership gets most interesting. It's not at the beginning of your career usually. Sometimes you don't know enough to be worried in the beginning, but it's really when the stakes are higher, when the room's bigger, when the decisions matter more. And leadership imposter syndrome is really, really common at the executive level, but we don't often talk about it. So the issue isn't whether it exists. The real question is, what do you choose to do about it? Because if we leave it unchecked, it can distract you, it can drain your confidence and slow your momentum. It makes things harder. But if you understand it and engage it, it can actually sharpen your leadership. So stick around to the end. I've got a few practical tips for how to deal with it. I've got a few questions that I've gotten that I'll cover. And I really think that you'll find something of value in here. Okay, so why am I talking about leadership imposter syndrome? Why is it even important? Because it is so common at the executive level. Most executives experience it, especially during moments of growth, when you're uncomfortable, that's when you can grow. And oftentimes that's when you're in a new role or things have changed or restructured or you have new leadership. All of those things can bring that leadership imposter syndrome on or bring it back. Um, you're doing things that you've never done before when you're in a new role. So it's not it doesn't mean that you're unqualified in any way. It means that leadership has gotten more complex or more ambiguous, or the challenge is harder and you're reacting to that. So it's not even really a statement on you and your capabilities. It's really an awareness that the challenge is a bigger one than you've handled before. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind when that little voice shows up for you is that while you may feel alone in it, you are not alone. Most people experience that at some point in their growth journey. So it's important to reach out and get some support during that time. In fact, leadership imposter syndrome is one of the reasons that I actually became a coach. So I sort of feel a special fondness for it. I remember back to when I had just taken on my dream job and I had it big time. I was very much feeling like this was the moment that I was supposed to really know what I was doing. I had just gotten this big job. I had to prove them right in putting me in the job. So while I was putting pressure on myself to absolutely have the answers, it was maybe the moment that I felt that the least in I don't know how long on my leadership journey. Now, I was really fortunate that along with that promotion, my company recognized the need for support at that time and had me working with an executive coach. And I vividly remember a conversation I had with her. This is a lot of years ago already. And asking her, this is how I'm feeling. This was my safe space. I couldn't tell anybody else. I didn't want anybody to know. I shared with her that I was feeling sort of really unworthy and questioning myself. Did everyone feel that way? Because I looked around, I didn't think anybody felt that way. And she said, absolutely. In her experience, everyone felt that way. It's just some people were dealing with it better and managing it and getting it out of their way. And that conversation was really freeing to me. And it's one of the reasons I became a coach, because it made a big difference. So the choice you have when leadership imposter syndrome shows up, because we said you don't have a choice that it does show up. If it does, you kind of have a choice of two paths you can take. The first is you can let it distract you and weigh you down, in which case leadership will feel heavier than it needs to be. And you have to put some energy into managing that perception, your own feelings or what you imagine are the feelings of others. You're putting energy into that rather than putting your energy into making an impact. It actually can block your curiosity, because if you're busy trying to prove yourself and look like you know what you're doing to a greater degree than you may feel, you aren't comfortable and confident to ask some questions and learn more and acknowledge when there's something you may not need to know. And it may not be something you should know. It just may be something you haven't dealt with before. Another implication of letting that leadership imposter syndrome distract you is that you can actually, your momentum slows because you're hesitating and you're overthinking everything. That may feel familiar to you, that inner conversation that goes on about, may cause you to pause before you take a stand or make a decision. And you really, once you get into your head, it's hard to get out of your head. And it really is distracting and it pulls you out of the moment. So basically, if you let this LIS distract you, it's going to take you in a direction where your impact is less and the work that you need to put into it is harder. This is not what we're trying to achieve. But you do have another choice, which is to learn how to work with it and work around it. You can neutralize its disruptive effects by doing some mindset shifts and just some awareness. You can use it as information rather than interference. It, in some ways, is a signal that you're onto something, big and meaty, and that's going to involve your growth. You got to get out of your comfort zone for those things to happen, for that growth to happen. And this feeling of discomfort may be a signal that that's where you're headed. You also have the opportunity to really stay focused on forward movement, which is one of the best ways to break that leadership imposter syndrome's hold on you. Take action on something can break that focus and really get you moving forward. One thing to keep in mind about, as you think about leadership imposter syndrome and figure out if it happens for you, figure out what you want to do about it. This isn't about fixing anything about you or your leadership. It is not a flaw or deficiency. It's a natural result of being a self-aware leader who's doing something you haven't done before. How can we know how to do things we've never done before? The challenge is that if you judge it is, that leadership imposter syndrome showed up. It always causes me problems. It always gets in my way. If you judge it, it only makes it worse. It only gives it more power because it isn't something to solve or eliminate. The goal really is to lead with more ease, with more trust, self-trust, more self-respect, not to become someone else, but to find your own voice in time, because you don't always have it on day one. Keep in mind that for LIS, ignoring it is not a solution. You may feel like you can drown out that voice, but it will get louder. Pretending it's not there does not make it go away. It just kind of goes under the surface and in some ways can become more influential as that inner critic voice because it can derail some of the things you're thinking about. It keeps you from being present in the moment. And so driving it underground doesn't necessarily help you become more present. It just makes its voice act on you in some different ways. If you don't examine it, if you try and ignore it, a lot of times what it results in is second guessing yourself, even over preparing, which may sound counterintuitive. Wait a minute, if I'm more prepared, how is that a bad thing? The bottom line is you're wasting time and effort. It's inefficient. You may have to put in more effort for less of an impact, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. Awareness is the first step to taking charge of this, as is true with so many things. And so that's one of the big reasons that I'm having this conversation with you today, is so that you can recognize it's okay. Most people feel this way. And once I'm aware of it, I can take some steps to address it. Okay, so how does LIS show up day to day? Sometimes it's that quiet self-doubt before key meetings, that, nervous feeling and trying to cram a lot of information in, that kind of thing. That self-doubt that shows up then. It also can show up as hesitation to speak up or take a clear stance. You may have an idea that would be valuable in the moment, sharing in that group meeting or whatever that is, but you may be, oh, is this valuable? Is this on target? Sometimes if you do have the courage to share your opinion or a stand, you may sort of couch it or almost apologize for it in the way that you share it. That often can be leadership imposter syndrome showing up and acting on us. Here's another way it shows up. Is you may replay the decisions after the fact. Oh, here's what I should have done. I can't believe I said that. Someone else said something that disagreed. My idea was wrong. Like replaying and sort of staying in your head about it after the fact is a sign that you've got leadership imposter syndrome going on. And sometimes it's just when you recognize that there's a gap between what you know and how confidently you act on it. So you're sort of dimming your own light and taking away some of your own power in that situation. Those are all ways that it shows up. So when leadership imposter syndrome pulls you out of the moment and distracts you, what's the impact? Well, you have reduced presence and clarity in conversations. You are not truly in the moment. You are not truly listening to the input from others because you're listening to the voice in your own head. You will have less courage in making decisions. You aren't feeling it. This is where, again, you may sort of apologize for having input or couch it in a way of, well, everyone may not agree with this. Doesn't matter if everyone agrees with it. Taking a stand and having courage in decision-making is what you will grow into as a leader, but the leadership imposter syndrome may be preventing you from doing that right now. You'll have slower follow through because you'll be overthinking everything and you'll be doubting it. And you'll find that when leadership imposter syndrome is powerful for you, your leadership requires more effort than it needs to. And if something's requiring that much effort, it's not as natural, you're not as authentic, you're not being your true self. So those are ways that leadership imposter syndrome can get in the way for you. But there's a really powerful mindset shift that enables you to come back to your true self. Leadership imposter syndrome often signals that you are stretching into meaningful territory. You are on to something that's worthwhile. If you feel, well, let me say it the other way. If you take on a new role and you don't feel uncomfortable at first, you likely will be bored in 3 months. So the meaningful things, the meaty things, the big challenges are worth feeling uncomfortable about. And so sometimes you just sort of need to settle that and push through it a little bit. Another mindset shift. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Why don't I know how to do this? The shift is really to ask, what is this moment asking of me as a leader? And how do I want to show up as a leader? How do I want others to be feeling now? Those kinds of questions really can help you tap into creative problem solving and collaboration as opposed to judging yourself and shutting yourself down. Another mindset shift you can make when LIS shows up is to help just be present and stay grounded in that moment, because what that does is it preserves your ability to tap into your judgment, your experience and wisdom, your intuition. I mean, these are some of your best leadership skills. And if we let that inner critic voice or that LIS get in the way, we're cutting ourselves off from access to those things. So it's interesting to think about what becomes possible when you stop letting LIS run the show. You will be more clear and you will have a greater power to be decisive. You will. You'll be the leader that you want to be because you're not second guessing it. You absolutely will be able to tap into more courage to lead both visibly and authentically. You will step out and be willing to be more present. You will have stronger follow through because you won't be second guessing everything. Things will be easier, things will flow. You won't be ruminating on it, so other people are waiting for you. You will be more efficient. And in general, you will be leading in a way that feels lighter, not heavier. The whole point of being a leader is to multiply the impact of others. You are creating value through others many times. And so you want to have an exponential effect to that, to their. So the end result of this can be, do you ever have one of those days? So what this can result in is leadership that feels lighter, not heavier. You can be more your authentic self. You can have a greater impact. And frankly, you can enjoy it a lot more if you're able to get that LIS out of your way. So how do you do it? How do you start noticing and leveraging this leadership imposter syndrome so that you can harness it and use it not in a way that diminishes your impact, but in a way that actually can fuel you? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to when this LIS tends to whisper to you or sometimes to yell at you in your own mind. Are there specific situations where it tends to show up more? When you're taking on decisions, when you're in high visibility moments, when you're leading a team, when you're dealing with your boss, like notice when that tends to show up for you. And notice your patterns. Do you hesitate? Do you over-explain, which sometimes is a lack of clarity? Are you self-editing and holding yourself back?
Randy, before you go further, I believe you've muted yourself. Now I can hear you.
Thank you. So a really important thing is to recognize that uh, you are not an imposter. Rather, this force is acting on you. This leadership imposter syndrome is showing up for you. And remember, I said that happens for almost everybody. So don't judge yourself. Just recognize it's there, and you can then give it less power and sort of step beyond it. A great way to do that is to use evidence and your experience and wisdom to ground yourself instead of letting yourself spiral. A lot of times what evidence do I have that I do know how to do this? How have I done this kind of thing in other situations? You have a lot more to draw on than you may be recognizing when you're feeling like, uh-oh, this is showing up again and it's going to hold me frozen in place. And another really powerful way to deal with this is to redirect your energy instead of proving yourself worthy to leading, to coming up with the answer collectively, to figuring out the path forward, even in absence of knowing exactly what the answer is. When you sort of redirect yourself that way and create that mindset shift for yourself, it really can unlock you and you can get back to your true self. So I've gotten a couple questions about leadership imposter syndrome that I want to address here. This one is great. How do I distinguish between leadership imposter syndrome and the legitimate skill or experience gap that I need to address? This may just be information that I don't have. And I think that that's really important. What the best way to do that is to just try and look at it as objectively as you can. What is the thing that you fear most in this situation? And are there ways to fill that gap with information, something that you haven't done before? Sometimes you need to talk this out with somebody else, because I started by saying be as objective as you can. If it's feeling really powerful for you, sometimes it's very hard to be objective. So talk it through with a trusted peer or mentor, or somebody that you know and trust. Talk through what you're feeling and then try and get objective. How do I know this is true? What information or experience or wisdom from another can I get to help me move past this situation and fill the gaps here? Usually it's just a situation that you're in, you haven't done before. So of course it feels familiar. Most of the things that we learn in life we're not great at them the first time that we do it. So a little bit of grace, a little bit of kindness towards yourself, and talking it through with someone else can really help make a difference there. Another question that I got is, what do you recommend I do in the moment when imposter syndrome shows up, especially in high stakes meetings or decisions? A lot of times, that in that moment, when you kind of freeze, that can feed on itself and you become less and less in the moment. So it's a really good question to ask. Everyone has different mechanisms for dealing with this self-chatter. But a good way to go oftentimes is to just stop and take a deep breath and sort of reconnect with yourself in that moment. And think about what you do know and potentially tap into curiosity. In those moments. Because this may be a situation where you don't necessarily know the answer, but you may be able to get some input from others. Okay, I'm going to skip that question. It doesn't seem to agree with me. Leadership imposter syndrome does not mean that you don't belong. It often shows up precisely because you do belong. This work is not about fixing yourself. It's about choosing not to let that quiet self-doubt dictate how you lead. And remember, that quiet self-doubt comes from really caring to do a good job, to have a strong impact. When you learn to notice it, you can neutralize its impact and even leverage it. So your leadership becomes clearer, braver, and more sustainable. The question is not the question is not whether LIS will show up. It's what might change if it stopped getting in your way. That's really the powerful thing to take on here. That's really where the impact of this can be. And again, I want to say that you are not alone in this. I don't mean to suggest you're not special, but you are not unique. We all experience this. And the trick is finding your way to make that mindset shift and deal with it. If you want to talk more about it, I am happy to. Just reach out. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear what your techniques are for dealing with this. And I'd love to help if I can. Thanks so much.